One of the last few questions we asked Professor Shireke was, what must give for ASUU to return to school? That's where we begin this morning with Professor Ayoyemi Lawal Arowolo, who is a lecturer in industrial law. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
First of all, your own thoughts on this. You are, should I say you are also a victim as well?
Yes, I said I was going to start with that. I am also a victim of ASUU strike, 1992.
Oh.
Not 9 months, 18 months straight up. 18 months, it affected me mentally. You can say I'm a chubby person. I actually slimmed down a lot because I wouldn't eat. I was tired. My parents were adamant I had to stay in school. I wasn't going to go abroad. And I know some of my colleagues went abroad and some of them are not lawyers today because they just had to leave. They were tired of what was going on. 18 months straight up, we didn't go to school. So 1990, 100 level, 1992 out of school, 92 going to 300 level, out of school for a long time. And then do you know what happens? We go back to school, so it's back to back, back to back, back to back. So some of us kind of scaled through because we get other exposures. I finished and I traveled, and then, yes, you're good. They claim you're good. But some don't have that opportunity. So we're quarter-baked or half-baked or three-quarter-baked, whatever we are, because it's back-to-back, because we needed to finish on time. We resumed September 1990, and we left July 1997.
7 years for a 5-year course.
And I never failed a course.
So, are you saying that there are students who may suffer the same fate now?
Yes, and that's why I'm thinking, in all of these battles, do we ever prioritize the students? Sometimes in class, I ask my students, what do you think? And each time they go after ASUU. No, ASUU's not being fair. Who did I go after then? Who did I think offended me? Who made me spend 7 years? ASUU. Sometimes we don't think about the government. Your mind just doesn't go to the government. Who is going on strike? It is ASUU. Yes, do you sympathize with ASUU? Yes. Because they're not just fighting their own cause. They're fighting the cause of the students as well. You see some public universities, the kids are sitting on the floor. No, that's not right. But sometimes they don't mind sitting on the floor just to get done with school.
As far as they're in school, right?
As far as they're in school. I heard that there was this news, I don't know if it is true or not, it could be fake news, of the student that committed suicide. Sometimes it does affect students mentally. The question is, where are the students in all of us?
I know that.
Sorry, in all of the, I remember something that you said earlier, about psychosocial assistance for children. And that would probably even spill for, students now. From your own experience, if you don't mind me going back there again and trying to juxtapose it with the current realities today, there are those who may not have, just as you said, the privilege of going abroad to balance things out as you have, but there are those who are stuck here now. It's ASUU or nothing else. Nigerian public universities or nothing else for them. But in terms of psychosocial assistance, do you think is it time for us to be talking about it, or it's too early?
I think it's time. Going back as well again, 1992, 3 decades, 30 years, ASUU back and forth. And they're still waiting for the government. So it's about time. They're still waiting for the government. And the students are really suffering because you see them. I have a student who is going to be in year 4 come this year. She's 19. And the same people she got into school with in public universities are in year 1.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. So how do you think they feel beside each other? It's about time we did something about the situation. And I just believe the strike is not working. If it were 3 decades, 30 years, what can we do to make it work? Because I'm also an academic and all that. So I kind of sympathize with ASUU. We all go after the federal government and stuff like that. But sometimes you think, okay, they claim they don't have the money. They hardly have the money and all that. But what are we going to do? Because why? Lots of lives, their mental state, their physical state. Some of them give up. Some of them don't do it anymore. Lots of lives. And then thank God for private universities. I'll have to say that. Because if there were no private universities, then there'll be more lives, do you understand? Put into this triangle of federal government ASUU issues. And then what I feel in the future as well is you soon start having private universities that are quite cheap enough because they'll be dealing with quantity. And then maybe with time, people will just be like, public universities, might become extinct. I don't know.
And you know, that's
But that's
really dangerous for a lot of people. Because speaking with Professor Sodeke, and he was saying that there was a proposal to have students pay 1 million, and he thought, no way, what's even the minimum wage in Nigeria? And we're talking 1 million. So yes, for some people, thank God they're private universities, but for some others, I mean, they can't even aspire to achieve that or to afford that, to be honest, as at today. I mean, even the parents that afford it will tell you what they have to go through just to pay the fees. But you said something quite instructive, that strikes are not working anymore. And for ASUU, strikes are the most potent tool. So if strikes are not working, if the MOAs, MOUs, there's another one, if those ones aren't working, so what do we do, really? What's the option?
I don't know. Sometimes I think the fees of private universities are exaggerated. You have them cutting across. I've seen a private university of 200,000. Depends on what you want.
That's still more than a public university anyway.
Some public universities are getting to that point. I don't want to mention names, but they're getting to the point of 250. I went 90 naira, 250 naira. Some public universities are getting to that point of being above 100, of being above 200. So it gets to that point whereby, just like you have private primary schools and secondary schools, they'll call some mushroom primary schools or mushroom that they pay 40,000 a term, 40,000 naira a term, and you have the big ones that pay 500,000. So there'll be a point in time where people say, let's deal with quantity. The more you have, the more. And the other thing I want to say, when we raise funds in universities. Private universities raise funds. We find a way to raise funds. Apart from that, we also do R&D, research and development. In some parts of the world, do you know the amount of patents some universities have? Generated by lecturers? I don't know if my friend will mind this, but I have a colleague who recently won the LNG Literature.
Okay, the Writers' Award.
Yes, Professor Chalichi. Do you know how much she got for that? And she's a law lecturer. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
It was $100,000.
Yes, $100,000.
That surprise money is public knowledge.
No one is going after her. We all know this.
You know. So I know. So I'm thinking you have intellectual properties. That's what we do. Whether from copyright, patents, trademark. Copyright, especially copyright and patents. Patents are inventions. Do you understand? It's part of the points we get for promotion. How many patents do you have? How can universities generate income without the federal government?
So you're saying this whole strike thing is not working, then universities need to look inwards to raise funds?
I think so.
So that's a very interesting point you made. But we have to talk about the agreement
for the sake of the kids.
Of the students, definitely. But we need to talk about the agreements signed as well. And some of them date back to, in fact, the 2009 agreement was a 2006 renegotiated agreement. Then they had a 2012 needs assessment. They had another MOU, MOA, and the others signed afterwards. But, there's something they call collective bargaining. And what ASUU, in fact, NLC has even joined voices with ASUU saying, you have to respect this. An agreement was signed. Pen was put to paper. You weren't under influence or anything. It wasn't under duress. It was signed. And so what do you think in that angle? Because ASUU is saying, well, it's an agreement. You have to abide by it.
Yes. I think one should recognize when another party is calling for time. Let's do negotiations. Let's bargain. Everybody knows a collective agreement is nothing but a collective bargaining agreement. It's nothing but a gentleman's handshake. Okay, I'll do it. What if he doesn't do it? Then you go on strike. Then you keep going on strike. Then you forever go on strike. What if he doesn't do it? What do? You need to think of a plan B. We're not saying they should, like they said, they go on strike in other parts of the world. Actually, this we learned from the British. They started this strike. If you notice, the Americans don't do it as much. You do it. There was this
that's
time.
why we got the song "Solidarity Forever."
Forever.
Yeah,
divided. And then there was this time. Let me use this as an example. I was going to go for a fellowship in the UK. I won't mention the university, and I sent in a letter of application saying I'm coming over. I would like to come over. Can you accommodate me for a semester that year, 2018? And she didn't respond to me for 2 months, and then she finally responded and said, "We're on strike." So on Thursdays, I don't do nothing. On Tuesdays, I don't do nothing. Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, she goes to school normal. It's kind of like there's a balance. It will affect the students, but not as much as it happens here. Do you understand? The government doesn't want that. They don't want her not going to school on Thursdays. So she said that's why she's not responded, that they just called off the strike. That's why she's responding to me, because she got the message on a certain day. She didn't check her mail on some days and stuff like that. So there's a balance. The kids are still going to school, but not like it should be. So that's why when you have strikes, you have the go slow. Do you understand? You have different forms of strike. Walk to rule. Do you understand? There are various forms. So this one is like, we do it so we get a response. There's no response. Collective bargaining agreement before 2006, way back. This has been ongoing forever. It's been, so we need to do something.
When you said we need a plan B, you've talked about universities getting creative about raising money. How, these are public universities. It's not like private universities that can take certain initiatives by themselves. They are public universities. Yes. They answer to the NUC, which answers to the Federal Ministry of Education. So even if they're going to take such initiative, they have to get all levels of approvals. So in terms of this plan B, what, in your opinion, would be the way forward?
I'm not... I definitely, I don't work in a public university, and one of the reasons is because of ASUU strikes, sincerely. I couldn't watch my kids go home all the time. So I don't know the process to raising funds, do you understand, as public universities. But one thing I know is R&D is expected of all universities. Most universities outside the country have a technology unit. They have an IP technology unit, whereby that's what we do. You get promoted because you think of stuff that will work. You get promoted because you think of various things that, and those things that you think they can work, apart from research purposes, for commercial purposes as well. Do you understand? So if
individual lecturers.
Individual lectures, that's what we do. We're meant to do research for the development of the country. So for instance, in the science departments and even in teaching hospitals and all that, you need to come up with inventions. It's required of us as lecturers to come up with such things. So if that will get you some money and stuff like that, I wouldn't say I know what NUC will say, but I don't think NUC has an axe to say, no, don't do research and development. No, don't generate inventions. No, don't be creative. Because it's part of the criteria.
Does this incessant ASUU strikes, or rather, let me decrypt it based on the conversation. Does this incessant strike by lecturers in any way demean their capacity to be as productive as you expect?
Definitely. Definitely. And I don't want, this is a very passionate and sensitive thing, and I just don't want to raise, but definitely. There have been times when they've said, oh, private university lecturers are not as good as public. Not anymore. Not anymore. Back to back. Back to back. You must do this. We must do. We have meetings and they're talking about patents, registration of patents. We're talking about ways to develop stuff, ways to generate stuff. And I'm not at home. I'm not at home. Because you have this tendency to be at home. She said that somebody mentioned that her daughter was getting around her. She wouldn't study. How many lecturers actually, because when they're on strike, they look for another means of survival. So what happens to that part, which is key? We must be on point, up to date on all our areas of specialization.
I think there are exceptions to that. I know students who have found other means of educating themselves, online especially. Some have picked up coding, developing and all of that. In fact, some of them say, maybe school is not working for me. I'll focus on, is it fashion and all of that. And I mean, different strokes for different folks. But you mentioned gentleman's agreement then, and that presupposes that there are two gentlemen. ASUU remains a gentleman.
One of them is not a gentleman for not fulfilling his own part of the agreement.
How do we resolve that gentleman not being a gentleman? Because this will keep going, and it's a relationship they have to, keep on. So should we also tackle the gentleman in this case that is not being a gentleman? The one that is not fulfilling his own part of the agreement. I just want to mention something quickly before that as well. I've seen students from public universities who find another means of income, then come to a private university. Because in the world, without that document or certification, they feel they're not at par. They actually make that money,
to go in.
Just to add, pardon me, Professor Sodeke actually said that, well, if you finish from a public university and a private university, there's a sense, there's a pride that comes with a public university and recognition. I think that was what he said, because we gave the example of Rema on Twitter, who was trying to choose between a public and a private university. And, you know, the thinking out there is a public university has, you know, better recognition, better reach out there. A public university? A public university.
Yes. Once upon a time. That was once upon a time. I've had UN agencies ask for students from my university, which I won't mention, for internships. They're everywhere. People are asking for them.
But in the recent rating, the public university is #1 in Nigeria.
That's what they say. That's what they keep saying, but they're not in school.
But
they're never in school.
That's a low blow right there.
They're never in school.
Well, quickly respond to the question that, you know, my colleague asked about how we talk to this other gentleman to be the gentleman.
Yes, and that's what they've been doing. Listen to what they've been doing, talking to the gentleman. Okay, just not education. In everything, as a gentleman being a gentleman. So how do you make a gentleman be a gentleman? That's where the problem lies. And that's why they have to find a way for themselves or for their schools or whatever, because the gentleman cannot be beaten up. The most you can do is go on strike. But where do these kids? It's really, and that means you have so much wrongs going on in the society.
Is this justiciable? Is this issue justiciable?
Non-justiciable.
Okay, justiciable.
But now, I always tell my students this. I said, you can make a non-justiciable justiciable if it starts infringing on your fundamental human rights, like I mentioned too, dignity and sometimes life. He committed suicide.
What about rights to education as well?
Not justiciable, but you can make it justiciable.
Oh, we need to come for classes.
Well, Law 101 pre-lecture. Yes, so. Professor Ayoyemi Lawal-Arowolo, lecturer in industrial law. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Well, the next thing to talk about is leadership in order for these issues not to be repetitive. That's when we return.